My wife had her wild phase before me, and now that I'm finally thriving, I feel like I missed out. After our initial conversation, things actually seemed to improve at first. My wife made a genuine effort to initiate more, and we did try some new things in the bedroom. She suggested we make a list of things we both wanted to try, and we worked through it together. For about 6 weeks, I felt like we were finally getting somewhere. The frequency increased, she seemed more engaged, and I thought I was getting that passion I'd been craving. I remember feeling vindicated, like all those Reddit comments saying I was being unreasonable were wrong. But looking back now, I can see that my wife was forcing herself through a lot of it. At the time, I interpreted her willingness as enthusiasm, but there were signs I chose to ignore. She'd seem distant afterward sometimes, or she'd need a few days between encounters to recharge. When I'd suggest something new, she'd agree, but with less excitement each time. The turning point came when I brought up the idea of role-playing scenarios. Nothing extreme, just the kind of stuff you see in movies, strangers meeting at a bar, that kind of thing. She agreed, but during our first attempt, she started crying halfway through. When I asked what was wrong, she said she felt like she was performing for me rather than connecting with me. She said it reminded her too much of her college days, when she felt like she had to be someone she wasn't to keep guys interested. That should have been a wake-up call for me. Instead, I got frustrated. I told her that she'd done these things before and enjoyed them. So why was it different now? I said it felt unfair that she'd explored all these experiences with other people, but wouldn't with me, her husband. The fight that followed was brutal. She accused me of treating her like a sex object rather than a partner. I accused her of being selfish and hypocritical. We both said things we couldn't take back. After that fight, things got weird between us. We'd have make-up sex that felt hollow, followed by days of cold politeness. The kids could sense something was wrong, even though we tried to hide it. I started spending more time at the gym, partly to maintain my physique, but mostly to get out of the house. The attention from other women became more noticeable to me, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. I never acted on anything, but I found myself flirting more, staying longer to chat with the women who approached me. My wife noticed the change in me. She started asking where I'd been when I came home late, checking my phone more often, asking about my day in a way that felt like interrogation rather than genuine interest. The worst part was that our sex life became this weird battleground. She'd initiate sometimes, but it felt like she was doing it to prevent me from complaining rather than because she wanted to. And when I'd suggest trying something new, she'd shut down immediately, which would frustrate me and lead to more arguments. During one particularly bad fight, I made the mistake of mentioning my sister's comment about how I deserved to have an experience with at least one other woman. My wife went nuclear. She accused me of planning to cheat, said I was using her past against her, and asked if I'd married her just to have a practice partner until someone better came along. I tried to explain that I wasn't planning to cheat, that I just felt like I'd missed out on a normal part of life that everyone else gets to experience. But the damage was done. She started pulling away emotionally, and I responded by getting more demanding physically. Remember how I mentioned getting attention from women at the library in my original post? Well, one of them, let's call her Jessica, started being really persistent. She was probably mid-20s, clearly attracted to this silver fox getting his life together thing I had going on. At first, I enjoyed the ego boost but kept things strictly friendly. But as my marriage got more strained, those conversations became a highlight of my day. Jessica was enthusiastic, flirty, and made me feel desired in a way I hadn't felt at home in months. One day, she suggested we grab coffee after the library closed. I said yes. Nothing happened that first time. We just talked for 2 hours about books, life, our goals. But Jessica made it clear she was interested in more. She touched my arm when she laughed, complimented my physique, asked personal questions about my marriage. I went home that night and tried to be intimate with my wife. She could tell something was different about me. I was more aggressive, more demanding. Afterward, she asked if I was thinking about someone else. I denied it, but she didn't believe me. The next week, I met Jessica for coffee again. And the week after that. Each time, the conversations got more flirtatious, more personal. She told me about her own wild phase that she was still in, made jokes about older men being more experienced, asked what I was looking for. I told myself I was just making a friend, but I knew I was lying. I was emotionally cheating, even if nothing physical had happened yet. Things came to a head on a Tuesday night. My wife had tried to initiate, but I was distracted thinking about Jessica. I couldn't get into it, couldn't connect with my wife the way I used to. She could tell. "Who is she?" my wife asked afterward. I tried to deny it, but she pressed. She'd noticed changes in my behavior, my phone habits, my schedule. She'd seen me texting someone and smiling. She knew. So, I told her about Jessica. Not everything. I downplayed the emotional affair aspect and made it sound like casual friendship. But I did admit that I'd been talking to someone who made me feel attractive and desired. My wife's face went through about 5 different emotions: hurt, anger, betrayal, resignation, and finally something I'd never seen before: complete detachment. "So this is what you want," she said. It wasn't a question. "You want to explore. You want your wild phase. You want to feel what I felt in college." I started to protest that it wasn't like that, but she held up her hand. "I get it," she said. "I really do. I had my fun, and now I want stability, and you never got that chance. It's not fair to you." For a moment, I thought she was going to suggest we work through it together. Maybe counseling, maybe some kind of arrangement, maybe just more patience while we figured things out. Instead, she said, "I think you should move out for a while. Figure out what you really want. Have your experiences. And then we can decide if this marriage is something we both still want." I was stunned. This wasn't what I'd wanted at all. I'd wanted her to fight for us, to try harder, to match my energy and passion. I hadn't wanted a separation. But as I tried to argue, she just got more resolute. She said she was tired of feeling like she was failing some test, tired of competing with fantasies and memories and other women. She said she'd rather give me space to explore what I thought I needed than spend the next few years watching our marriage slowly die from resentment. I moved into a furnished apartment near my gym. At first, it felt like freedom. I could come and go as I pleased. I could pursue Jessica without guilt. I could finally have those experiences I'd been craving. Jessica was thrilled when I told her I was separated. She immediately suggested we celebrate at her place. I won't go into details, but let's just say I finally got to experience some of those things I'd been fantasizing about. And it was fine. Good even at first. Jessica was enthusiastic and adventurous in ways my wife hadn't been in years. She was willing to try anything, go anywhere, do whatever spur-of-the-moment activity sounded fun. But after a few weeks, I started to notice things. Jessica's wildness wasn't passion, it was performance. She was doing things because she thought that's what men wanted, not because she genuinely enjoyed them. She'd check my reaction during intimate moments to make sure she was doing it right. She also had no depth. Our conversations were surface level. She didn't know me, didn't care about my dreams or fears or the things that made me who I am. She knew I was good-looking and had an interesting job and was recently separated, and that was enough for her. Meanwhile, my kids were struggling with the separation. My 7-year-old daughter asked me every time I saw her when I was coming home. My 5-year-old son started acting out at school. They didn't understand why Daddy lived in a different house now. My wife, to her credit, never badmouthed me to them. She just said that Daddy and Mommy needed some time apart to work on themselves. But I could see the strain on her face every time I picked up the kids. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed, and deeply sad. About 2 months into the separation, I started dating other women besides Jessica. I used dating apps, met people at bars, even tried some of those meetup groups for singles. I was finally living that wild phase I thought I'd missed out on. And I was miserable. The problem with casual dating in your 30s is that it's not really casual. Everyone has baggage, expectations, complicated histories. The women I met were either looking for something serious, which I couldn't offer, or were commitment phobic in ways that made my head spin. Jessica started pushing for more from our relationship. She wanted to meet my kids, wanted me to introduce her to my friends, wanted to know when I was filing for divorce. When I hesitated, she accused me of stringing her along. She wasn't wrong. I was using her to fill a void that I thought was about sexual exploration, but which was actually about feeling valued and desired by my partner. Jessica made me feel wanted, but she didn't make me feel loved. The breaking point came when my daughter had a nightmare and called me crying at 2 a.m. I was at Jessica's place, and she got annoyed that I was talking to my kid instead of paying attention to her. She actually said, "Can't her mom handle that? You're not even living there anymore." I left immediately and drove to my old house. My wife met me at the door in her pajamas, looking worried. She didn't ask questions, just let me go upstairs to comfort my daughter. We all ended up falling asleep in the kids' room, me on the floor, my wife in my son's bed, both kids between us. I woke up the next morning and watched my wife making breakfast for the kids. She was singing softly to herself, the way she used to when we first got married. She looked tired but content, focused on taking care of our family. And I realized that I'd thrown away the most passionate relationship I'd ever had in pursuit of some fantasy about what passion was supposed to look like. My wife's wildness in college hadn't been about sexual exploration, it had been about searching for something real. She'd tried different experiences and different people because she hadn't found that connection yet. When she met me, she stopped searching because she'd found what she was looking for. I'd interpreted her contentment as complacency, her commitment as boredom. I'd wanted her to perform passion for me the way Jessica performed it, instead of recognizing that what we had was deeper and more real than anything I was going to find with someone new. That morning, after the kids went to school, my wife and I finally had the conversation we should have had months earlier. I apologized for everything, for pushing her beyond her comfort zone, for making her feel inadequate, for having an emotional affair, for prioritizing my fantasies over our family. I told her about my experiences during the separation, how empty they'd felt, how much I missed her and our life together. She listened without interrupting, though I could see her processing everything I was saying. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I knew you'd figure it out eventually. I just didn't know if it would happen before you completely destroyed us." She told me that she'd never wanted to deny me experiences, she'd wanted to be the person you had those experiences with. But she'd felt like I was comparing her to some ideal version of what she used to be, rather than appreciating who she was now. She said the hardest part hadn't been me wanting more adventure in our relationship, it had been feeling like she wasn't enough as she was. Like the woman who'd built a life with me, who'd carried and raised our children, who'd supported me through my transformation, wasn't as valuable as the hypothetical women I might meet. I had my wild phase, she said, but it was never about the experiences themselves. It was about finding someone who made me want to be wild. You used to be that person for me. But then you started treating our intimacy like it was homework instead of connection. That hit me hard because it was exactly right. I'd been so focused on checking boxes and having experiences that I'd stopped being present with her. I'd stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as an obstacle to what I thought I wanted. We talked for hours that day. I moved back home that week. I broke things off with Jessica, who called me an asshole and blocked me on everything. I deleted the dating apps and committed to rebuilding what I'd nearly thrown away.